So welcome to the lecture 9 in the second part of the classical mechanics. So in this lecture, we will try to cover the generalized momentum, cyclic coordinate and conservation relation. Before I proceed, let's rewind what we have discussed in last 8 lectures so that the continuity in classical mechanics is maintained, because the syllabus comes up to the mid semester. Therefore, it's good to know it. So in lecture 1, we discussed about basic mathematical concepts and the total and the partial differentials and reciprocity relation, and chain rule, all discussed in the lecture 1. In lecture 2, the Cartesian and plane polar coordinates was introduced. And in the lecture 3, the cylindrical and polar coordinates introduced. And then we also explain what is the choice of coordinates that you have to consider for solving the problem. And in lecture 4, the coordinates was continued to completion, and then started giving introduction towards work and potential energy part. And in lecture 5, the force and potential energy went into detail along with the harmonic approximation, work and potential energy in 2D and 3D, and introduce the concept of conservative and non-conservative forces. So in lecture 6, we introduced the idea of constraints and degree of freedoms, and then independent and generalized coordinates covering holonomic and non-holonomic part. So taking that, in lecture 7, the coordinate transformation, dynamic variables in terms of generalized coordinates, and the concept of Lagrangian formalism also was introduced. Finally, to make you more aware of Lagrange's equation of motion, we have discussed few examples to briefly give easy way of attempting the problems. Accordingly, the tutorial 4 also we gave a lot of examples. Although some solutions are yet to be shared, we will do that in due time. Now, what we seen in Lagrangian formalism was, we considered a function of generalized coordinates having q1 to qn, and then generalized velocities q dot 1 to q dot n and time, and this can be written in the form of simply the kinetic energy minus the potential energy. So basically, we are explaining the system, the embedded system, in completely scalar function such that you can derive the Lagrange's equation of motion using this particular second order equation. And for every individual generalized coordinate, you have one equation of motion. And for defining this Lagrangian, we say that the potential must exist and the given force is to be conservative, that so far we taken into account. And it was also said that there is no need to consider the constraint forces. This in Lagrangian formalisms. We will discuss more about this in next few lectures. Just be patient. And the form of Lagrange equation is independent of the choice of any set of generalized coordinates for a system that you consider. So this is what in Lagrangian formalism we discussed. Just a rewind. And now what we are going to discuss is a new concept called generalized momentum. You understood clearly what is called generalized coordinates. Then what you used to do earlier in a simple way. Now we have introduced the idea of generalized coordinates, and taking that, now we will go into another a generalized format, which is a momentum, and the momentum corresponding to a generalized coordinate, what happens. And this is what we are going to discuss in this class, and we also try to prove some mechanisms. Okay, let's take a simple example to start with. If I consider a Lagrangian of a free particle, which we can very well say L equal to half m x dot square, y dot square, z dot square. That's nicely written. Now, if I take the partial derivative of this Lagrangian with respect to x dot, then what would I get? I would get m x dot. Similarly, if I take the derivative with respect to y dot, then I will get m y dot. And similarly for m z dot for z dot. Now what is it called? Is nothing but the mx dot can be simply said to be x component of a linear momentum. Is that correct? So that means the px, we can write it as mx dot, otherwise the derivative of Lagrangian with respect to the generalized velocity term. So for Py, we can also write My dot, which we have explained it for Pz, Mz dot. That's very well understandable. If I take another example of freely rotating wheel with the moment of inertia I, for which the Lagrangian is explained to be half I theta dot square. So taking a derivative of Lagrangian with respect to theta dot will give us simply I theta dot, which is nothing but we can express as P theta, which is angular momentum. If you see both the examples, what we say is the momentum is the partial derivative of the Lagrangian with respect to the velocity, giving linear momentum as well as angular momentum. So taking this idea, we can construct a generalized momentum concept associating with a generalized coordinate, say qj here. We can write it in the form of pj is equal to partial derivative of Lagrangian with respect to q dot. And this momentum is also termed out to be conjugate momentum or canonical momentum. But then we should remember that although we say the generalized momentum is the derivative of Lagrangian with respect to generalized velocity, but then Lagrangian has two terms, which is both kinetic energy and potential energy. So if you take actual derivative, then it has to be the derivative of kinetic energy with respect to generalized velocity as well as the derivative of potential energy with respect to generalized velocity also exists. So that means the generalized momentum does not come only from the kinetic energy term, it also has the generalized velocity dependent potential energy term that you should always consider. But what we have seen so far in most of the problems that we dealt is the u is a function of position only, and therefore we said the derivative of partial derivative of potential energy with respect to generalized velocity is simply 0. So taking this into account, we simply write instead of partial derivative of Lagrangian with the generalized velocity as partial derivative of kinetic energy with the generalized velocity. So the examples that you can see here in this first problem, the potential energy is a function of height here, and in this it is a x square, and here also for a particular value it is a square, otherwise it's in the form of half k x square. So in all this problem, we always assume that it's a situation that the potential energy never be depend on the generalized velocity. But in generally when we talk about, we also have a situations where the potential is also velocity dependent. That means it depends on the q dot, and therefore you cannot take the partial derivative of potential energy with the velocity as simply 0. It will be non-zero. Therefore, your equation of generalized velocity would not simply contain the kinetic energy term, but it will have now potential energy term also. So you have to remember that. Now, where are this situation happens? Can we give an example for it? Yes. The example is like if you consider a charged particle, in electromagnetic field, then there is a kind of Lorentz force experienced by this charged particle, which can be defined as the force, which is nothing but Q E plus V cross P. This, I'm sure you are come across with these ideas. So now what happens if I consider a motion of charged particle plus E and mass m in the electromagnetic field, having the electric field component E and the magnetic field V, what will happen? So then we need to have two type of potential because associated with both the field. So one is the electric scalar potential, which gives information about this electric field if I take a divergence of this potential. Right, that's you know very well. So you can see imaginatively what is given here in the figure below. Similarly, there is another potential called magnetic vector potential, which would give information about the magnetic field in the form of that it is del cross A. So the curly behavior of it's like a curl natures. So the magnetic vector potential gives information about the magnetic field. So you can imagine a simple toroidal coil that you see here. So the B is that you can identify at every location using this magnetic vector potential. Our idea is to not describe here vector potential, to give a flavor, a situation where you have both electric field and magnetic field, what happens to the Lagrangian part and how to deal with that. Now, if that is so, then the potential energy of a moving particle, a moving charged particle in electromagnetic field can be said to be U equal to E phi minus E V dot A, and this can be derived starting from the force equation that we just written, that is E E plus V cross B that you started with, and taking the Maxwell's equation we can derive this solution for this potential energy. Again, that's not here. We want to simply say that there's a two form of it. One is the scalar part and there's a vector potential part. And where the phi and A are scalar and vector potential of the electromagnetic field. And we know we can get what is V, what is A, and therefore we can really explain the potential. So the V is nothing but x dot x cap, y dot y cap, z dot z cap. Similarly, A can be at a given situation. So Ax x cap, Ay y cap, and Az z cap. So since there's a dot product involved, will lead to the U is E phi minus E x dot Ax plus y dot Ay plus z dot Az. Now you can see that the potential energy here having a component of the velocity part. Now if you put this in the Lagrangian formalism, so then what we are going to get is, like, you can come out. So L is T minus U. We know the T already. Now U is placed here. And now if you do the same generalized momentum, that is partial derivative of Lagrangian with respect to the generalized velocity, what is going to happen? So let us take it for simply the derivative of Lagrangian with respect to x dot. Now what is going to be? So if you take it, that is the momentum of x component. So that is derivative of Lagrangian with the x dot will give us. So here it becomes mx dot because 2 gets cancelled. So you have it here. And this component will 0 because it is a scalar and constant. And here you have x dot. So therefore Eax will come because the sign will change it to plus. Similarly, we can take it for Py and Pz turning out with the extra component of Eay and here Eaz. Now, if you can put all three in a generalized format, then the generalized momentum can be written in a single vector form, which is nothing but P, which is equal to mv plus Ea. I know you can easily understand that the first term is a typical, mechanical concept arising from kinetic energy term, but then the second term is very interesting part that's coming out from the velocity dependent potential energy term. So this says that if you want to define a generalized momentum, then taking the generalized velocity as a rate of change of a generalized coordinate, which is dq by dt, you cannot simply multiply with mass so that you get a generalized momentum. That may be true for certain cases, but we have already seen this case charged particle in an electromagnetic field. This is not true. Which says that if I simply write the generalized momentum, I cannot write mq dot. Yes, it may be true for some special cases, but this is not the general form of writing. We should write rather in the form of differently, which is the derivative of partial derivative of Lagrangian with respect to generalized velocity. Now, if the Qj represents a translation, which means a dimension of linear momentum, then you will get Pj as a linear displacement, then Pj you will get as a linear momentum. Or if you take the Qj as an angle, then the Pj will be in that of angular momentum. So what we are all saying is, like, the generalized definition of momentum allows to consider a non-mechanical system as well, which is that you've seen in the electromagnetic field case. Now we can look at it from the dimensionality point of view, which we always try to find out what this EA is all about. And when you say dimensionality, MV comes in the form of ML T power minus 1. If EA has to be ordered in the same fashion, obviously you end up in the same dimensionality. Is that true? Yes. So here EA has the dimensionality similar to that, finally ending up ML T power minus 1. But then the question comes to our mind that just because the dimension is matching, can I just add whatever I feel like in a mechanical system to balance or to describe generalized format? For instance, you can take a torque and work. What we say for torque? We say for torque, this is F cross R, which is in the vector format. Our work done, we can take it as F dot R, which will end up in scalar format. But note down, the torque and work has the same dimension, but the concepts are definitely different. I can give another simple example, which you might have experienced it if you travel or you go to market. If you take a money, 10 rupees, when you want to add another quantity of money, say another 10 rupees, I can add 10 plus 10, 20. Suppose I buy something in market and I have to get a change, but the market fellow says, I don't have a change, why don't you take a chocolate? Which you see in most of this earlier in the toll gates. Sorry, not to describe, but I experience it. They say, take a chocolate, I don't have 5 rupees change. So how do we correlate money in chocolate? So this sometimes create confusions. So you don't have a direct way of putting things into that. And the same thing, you cannot tomorrow you go back and okay, you gave me a chocolate, I'll give you chocolate, give me back something else. So that's going to be more complicated. So that is where you have to be careful when you deal with a generalized system, which involves a variety of type of momentum. For example, in the area of waves, electromagnetic fields, etc. So the Lagrangian tells that you need not have only the mechanical type of issues and momentum coming in order to make real explanation, it will come and an additional factors to cover up the complete momentum concept, which is said to be generalized momentum. So therefore, the Newtonian mechanics that we talk about mostly, or you have so far dealt with, is a kind of a small part of Lagrangian formalism covering a limited conditions only. And we know that already that Newtonian formulations mostly based on the force, and we are now Lagrangian formulation gives a kind of situation where you have energy format with the scalar nature. Although they look into a different way of it, but it should give a completely the same equivalent result for a given problem. Otherwise, if we deal a problem in a different concept with a different answer, the world cannot be surveyed. On top of it, there are several important reasons why we should go for Lagrangian approach, because the equation of motion that you are going to debate to describe the system is simply based on working with the energy and without taking all type of forces involved. So when I say forces, there are situations where you have forces applied externally and there are constrained forces also. So therefore, the constraint forces involving constraint motions all has to be dealt very carefully if you take a force, but here it is very straightforward. And we are going to see in next few slides that a quantity, conserved quantity, can be easily identified by taking certain understanding that we are going to talk about in next few slides very soon. And then the Lagrangian talks about something, an interesting principle called principle of least action, or the shortest time, or the shortest path, which gives a lot of information or a powerful mechanism to deal the problems in classical mechanics. You would see in next few lectures, we are going to talk about what is the shortest path, shortest time, all these things nicely. And that when it comes, this Lagrangian formulation is going to be dealing very importantly, and this formulation also can be extended in quantum field theory and quantum mechanics. I'll give one example just to say that the force-based problems, what you can understand and how we should deal it, where if you simply consider the direct forces that you may not be able to solve it. For example, you consider a current carrying wire. Let's say this wire is carrying a current I. And obviously we can find out a magnetic field at any point. Let's say this is A. So you can use this simple Biot-Savart law to find out the field at this point A due to the current carrying wire here. So what eventually will be the field, or if you take a small element dl, the field due to this current carrying wire on the point A is almost directly proportional to sine theta component, which anyway you know all very well, and there's no difficulty in understanding it. Now let's consider another situation where the same plane, there's another particle, an alpha particle that moves in this direction, So when I say alpha particle, the charged particle moving means it generates a current and the corresponding magnetic field. So now there are two magnetic fields. The one magnetic field is due to current here. The another magnetic field is due to the field created by the motion of these charged particles. Now, when they are in there, so now this magnetic field will also put force on here. Similarly, the magnetic field due to the alpha particle also will exert force on this current carrying wire. There's no problem because that's a Newton's third law satisfies beautifully. But then let me take a point, let's say A prime, which is along the line and in which this alpha particle goes through this way. Now when this point A prime is along the wire, what would be the magnetic field at this point? Because the theta is 0, so magnetic field along the current carrying wire is going to be 0. In that situation, are we going to say that the field due to the current carrying wire is 0 and therefore it will not produce a force on this alpha particle, while the alpha particle, the magnetic field, experience a force on a current carrying wire? Such problems are more interesting to look at it. You would have not only these, there are many such problems where it will not be, if you consider simply, you cannot deal it, where you need to look at in more generalized way of it. Okay. Now let's look at the new concept as cyclic coordinates. The term may be looking very different, but don't worry, it's a very simple term. Let's consider a Lagrangian, which is again nicely written in the form of generalized coordinates, generalized velocity and time, which is nothing but t minus u. But now what we are going to say is that if a given coordinate, a particular coordinate does not appear in the Lagrangian, then that particular coordinate is called as a cyclic, or you can say they can be ignorable coordinate. Because when you want to describe a system with the independent coordinates, we can say that all independent coordinate will indirectly tell the number of degrees of freedom, which we nicely dealt with so many problems, and Professor Kanaya Pandey nicely explained it earlier part of it. Now, if you can ignore certain quantities when the Lagrangian is not dependent on that particular coordinate, we can deal the problems even much faster ways. Let's take with the example what it means. So if I consider a Lagrangian of a free particle where L can be written as of m x dot square y dot plus y dot square plus z dot square. In this situation, if you see that it's only the Lagrangian is dependent on q dot, not q, which means it is not dependent on x, y, z. So obviously, we can say that since x, y, z not appear in the Lagrangian, they are cyclic and they are not going to vary the or disturb the system in any way. Similarly, if we take a little more different way, take the Lagrangian of the particle now in a gravitational field, then the Lagrangian can be written as L, same equation turns up, but now with the additional term of potential energy. Now, if you look at, you have q dot and q as well, but the q is limited only along the z direction where the x and y is still missing. So therefore, we can simply say that since neither x nor y appears in this Lagrangian, these x and y can be said to be cyclic. A cyclic coordinate must be not disturbing or not participating in the equations. Let's look at the third case where you have a Lagrangian for a planet of mass m orbiting around the sun of mass capital M. And we can obviously write the Lagrangian in the form of m r dot square, r square theta dot square plus gmm by r. How many degrees of freedom we have here? You have r variation. So you have r and theta. But then looking at here, I have r dot, but there is a theta dot, but theta is not there. So therefore, this system, since it doesn't have theta in the Lagrangian, so it is cyclic with respect to this particular situation. So what this gives us an idea indirectly in a functional form that if any of the Lagrangian does not explicit dependence on the coordinate, given coordinate qj, we can simply say that the derivative of Lagrangian with the particular coordinate is simply 0. In such case, the Lagrange's equation of motion corresponding to this particular cyclic coordinate can be written so that since this term is going to be 0, so I can rewrite it simply the time derivative of the partial derivative of Lagrangian with respect to generalized velocity is 0. And we know very well in mathematics, if any function time derivative is 0 and this function is going to be simply constant. So can I say that the partial derivative of Lagrangian with the generalized velocity is constant, which means the generalized momentum connected to that cyclic coordinate is a constant. That's what straight away meaning to these definitions. So if your Lagrangian does not have any particular generalized coordinate, just try to solve it very quickly without looking at that particular point if any quantity is not, any coordinate is not participating it. Don't do mathematically the whole steps. You should be able to classify it quickly. For example, if we can look back our examples that we dealt in earlier classes, for this block sliding on a moving wedge, you have this block also sliding on a wedge, which is also a moving part here in the plane xy. We have written the Lagrangian in this functional form. Obviously, you have two generalized coordinate. So one I can say it as a like xm, the other one is q. And therefore, now if you look at this equation carefully, I have q dot and q. The other part x dot m is there, but do I see anywhere xm? I don't see anywhere xm. So therefore, we can straight away say that the xm is a cyclic coordinate. Thus, the generalized momentum corresponding to that xm is simply a constant. Now, you have to be a little careful because when you deal with the combined system, when you are saying that the momentum, generalized momentum with respect to that particular cyclic coordinate is constant, it's not talking about any particular particular portion of the system. It is the whole system that we are talking about. Entire system corresponding to the generalized coordinate is turning out to be constant. So that means the momentum of the entire system has to be set so, not either this mass or this capital mass independently can be constant. This is very important thing that you have to take care of it. So if you read back it, if I have a cyclic coordinate in a Lagrangian, then I can say Lagrangian is independent of the particular coordinate, and therefore any change in the cyclic coordinate is not going to affect my Lagrangian. If that is the case, the system is said to be symmetric under the change of that particular coordinate. If whatever the way you change that coordinate is not going to affect the Lagrangian part. So in that case, I can rewrite this part carefully that as a corresponding generalized coordinate, so generalized momentum for that particular generalized coordinate is simply conserved. That's a very simpler. So by seeing the Lagrangian, you can tell the quantities which are going to be conserved. That's a very straightforward way of it. So that means each symmetry in a coordinate gives rise to a corresponding conserved canonical momentum. For example, if you see back that planetary motions where we describe the Lagrangian here, because the theta is not existing here, therefore the Lagrangian, the partial derivative of Lagrangian with theta is turned out to be 0. So therefore the derivative of Lagrangian with theta dot, what is here? So it is only m r square theta dot, which has to be constant. What is this quantity? This is nothing but simply angular momentum. So we beautifully come back to here that the conservation of angular momentum is related to rotational symmetry of the system. So similarly, if you go back to the previous problem where we talked about the Lagrangian of a point mass moving in a general direction under the gravitational field, so we written the Lagrangian in this functional form. So again here, while z dot exists, x and y are missing, and therefore the x and y are cyclic coordinate. Thus, any change in either x or will change not affect the Lagrangian. So the conclusion says that the conservation of linear momentum is associated with the translation symmetry of the system. I hope now you can catch that by the concept of cyclic path, we can reach the conclusion of a given system quickly, then looking at a complicated way of using the force point of view. Of course, you may not agree with me, but that's not a problem. But that's how you evolve and we evolve and so on. So therefore, nothing to worry. So what finally we are now saying is, if you have a translational symmetry, which will be conservation of linear momentum takes place. In case of rotational symmetry, conservation of angular momentum comes. But then there's one more thing what left out. What is going to give us the conservation of energy? That's not talked about, right? Energy should also be constant in certain cases. So how do we say it? So what we can say is that if a given Lagrangian does not explicitly depend on time, then we can say the energy of the system is conserved provided with the condition that the potential energy is independent of velocity. Which means if L does not have explicit time dependent and it does not have the potential energy velocity component dependent, then I can say the derivative of partial derivative Lagrangian with time is 0, leading to a proof that the total energy of the system remains constant. In such case, the translational symmetry in time would also give a conservation of energy. Can we prove it? Let's look at a few quickly next 5 minutes. It's only mathematical form. I'm sure since you are very good in mathematics, let's take a quick way of it. Let's take the Lagrangian, which has a generalized coordinate, velocity and time. What will happen if I take a chain rule to get dl? Can we use the chain rule to do the partial differentiation to get dl? The dl we can write it, the partial derivative of Lagrangian with respect to generalized coordinate, velocity and time. How do we write it? We can write it in this form, which is going to be like this. So this is with respect to generalized coordinate, generalized velocity and time factor. You have done nicely in the earlier classes. You understood it very clearly without any difficulties. And now I can further take the time dependent, dl by dt. So if I take again time derivative, so this is going to be dqj by dt, which is q dot j. Here already dq dot is there, so it is going to be dq q double dot, and since dt is there, that will be simply 1. So I'm ending up in a function which has it. And now we said that L does not have explicit time dependent, and therefore this term I can simply take out to 0. So therefore my equation is going to be turned into only two terms of these two parts. I hope you agree with that. There's no difficulties, very simple mathematics. Now we are going to do a little bit tricky in mathematics. On my right side in this equation, I have the one depend on generalized coordinate and one depend on generalized velocity. Can I bring all of them in the same format? How do we do that? So I have to replace this functional form into the generalized velocity form. So here qj is there. I want to change it to q dot j. Can we do so? Yes. And that's what the Lagrangian helps you to do so, because what we all know, if I take the Lagrangian equation, Lagrange's equation, so we know that time derivative of partial derivative Lagrangian with respect to generalized velocity minus the partial derivative Lagrangian with the generalized coordinate is 0. So therefore, I can move this to right side. So instead of this term, I can substitute this part. That's what we do here. So instead of this term, instead of our right hand side term, we are now substituting the left hand side term. And now I can write this term nothing but d by dt of qj dot. In such case, I have functional form d by dt here. I have functional form d by dt here. Therefore, I can commonly take it outside by doing simple mathematic tricks. So now it is nothing but d by dt of, let's say this is A and this is B. So keeping 1, you take a derivative that you get here, and keeping A constant, take a derivative for B, you get this part of it. Very well. And now you have time derivative on left side and right side. So can I move this equation simply to one side so that the right side is 0? Yes, we can do that. So let's bring it, that time derivative of L minus this term is now simply 0. So not very complicated. Now let's move going for substituting the proper value of it. So we know that Lagrangian is t minus u, and when u is not depending on the generalized velocity, so you have this term is going to be 0, which is very important, and then you have the only function that you will have is, instead of L, now you can write it in t for q dot part. So can I just substitute that one in my original equation that we got left side? So instead of writing Lagrangian here, dl, sorry, derivative of partial derivative L by q dot j. Now since there is no q dot part for the potential energy, we replace L by T simply. I hope there should not be any problem. Now if I can find what exactly it is, I'm in a position to prove the theorem, for which you need a simple example. So let's take an example where a free particle whose kinetic energy is given in this functional form. So what would be the derivative, partial derivative of t with respect to q dot? I can write it simply. The derivative with respect to q dot is m x dot plus y dot plus z dot. And now I have to multiply with another q dot. That means I can multiply by x dot here, y dot here, z dot here. So that will end up in m x dot y dot plus z dot, which indirectly is in this functional form. This is nothing but m x dot square plus y dot square plus z dot square, which is nothing but, if I move this 2 into this right side, this term and this term is going to be the same. Now this functional form is a standard theorem saying that this relationship is true for a general case where it's written as Euler's theorem. If a given function is a homogeneous function of degree k of set of variables xi, then I can write the summation of those variables with the partial derivative of that function with respect to velocity and multiply by velocity component is nothing but kf. K is the degree of degree k of the set of variables. Here what is the degree? It is 2. So therefore I can write 2 into that function, which is 2t, and that's what we get it. So this is one of the standard function you would use frequently both in Lagrangian and Hamiltonian. Please keep a reminder of that. So since t is here second derivative of second degree of generalized velocities, so you get the 2t. Now we know the value here, what it is altogether 2t for this particular example. Now we can substitute it here very simply. So the derivative for the time derivative of L minus 2t, which is, you can rewrite it, L is t minus u. So cancelling this one will give us simply the d by dt of t plus u is 0, and as you know, then this become constant. So we come to a proof that if your Lagrangian does not explicitly depend on time and your potential is velocity independent, then it is possible that your t plus u would remain constant for the given system. So in summary, if you recall back, what we have discussed is we have introduced a new concept called generalized momentum, or canonical momentum or conjugate momentum. And then we say that it is not simply mass multiplied by generalized velocity. It has to be the partial derivative of Lagrangian with respect to q dot. And if any particular coordinate, generalized coordinate, doesn't exist in a Lagrangian, and that's not going to affect the Lagrangian, and you can set that to be cyclic coordinate or ignorable coordinate. Similarly, if you have a generalized momentum corresponding to that cyclic coordinate, we can say it's a constant of motion. And if you have a system where you have a lot of cyclic coordinate, means the system is symmetric under the change of that coordinate, and then we end up in proving this part of it, translational symmetry for conservation of linear momentum, and rotational symmetry for conservation of angular momentum, and translational symmetry in time provides the conservation of energy. Remember, it's only translational symmetry. Rotational symmetry in time would not give us the conservation of energy. So with that, we'll stop here.